Good evening, candidates and audience members. Thank you for attending the League of Women Voters of Santa Fe County's Candidate Forum for the contested primary race for Commissioner of Public Lands. I'm Hannah Burling, and I will be the moderator. For the first time in New Mexico history, legislation was passed allowing independent and DTS voters to participate in primary elections without changing their registration. Information on the semi-open primary legislation is available at the entrance table or at lwvsfc.org. The League focuses our candidate forums on contested elections during the primary season. Only one candidate qualified for the Republican ballot primary, so that candidate who is running uncontested will appear on the general election ballot. There are 3 candidates vying for the single ballot position for the general election on the Democratic ticket, and that is why we have those 3 candidates here tonight. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Santa Fe County, I want to express our gratitude to the Santa Fe New Mexican for broadcasting our candidate forums this year as a service to the community. Let me introduce Bill Church, the editor of the Santa Fe New Mexican. Bill.
Yes, Henry says project. So, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. And for the millions of people who will be watching this live stream later on YouTube or your favorite streaming channel, we welcome you to today's event. For the 3 candidates, by the way, if you are running for Land Commissioner, do not worry. You can wear your hat if you feel most comfortable. Wear it in the shower, wear it here. We expect the Land Commissioner to wear a hat at some point. So, we have been partnering with the League of Women Voters Santa Fe County for years, and we appreciate the partnership in so many ways. I am also hope that you will read the Santa Fe New Mexican in the upcoming days as the guide comes out as we get closer and closer to the primary. And of course, look at the spacious facility that you're at, to the Food Depot and the wonderful work that they do throughout northern New Mexico. Another example of the strong partnerships that guide this community. So we appreciate y'all being here, and of course, support local media. It keeps me employed. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. The League also has the good fortune to work with the Food Depot, whose amazing staff has made this venue available for 3 of our 4 candidate forums this primary season. The Food Depot's Executive Director, Jill Dixon, is also here tonight.
So we're using our teacher voices? Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here, and good evening. I'm Jill Dixon, the Executive Director of the Food Depot, and we want to thank you for sitting inside our mission for the evening. We are the food bank, the only food bank that serves 9 counties in northern New Mexico, a total of 26,000 square miles since we're focusing on land tonight. And 3 of the counties that we serve don't even have a grocery store. A little fun fact about how rural our communities are and how profound the challenges are when we're trying to make sure that not a single New Mexican goes without access to nutritious food. We do believe that hunger is a policy choice. You'll see that over there. And in New Mexico, we routinely make policy choices of abundance. We choose to fill SNAP benefits when those are threatened to be taken away. We choose to give universal school meals. And we choose to step forward and help our community, just like you're doing tonight by being part of the democratic process. So thank you for spending time here in our building. If you are curious, Bill was asking me a question about how they do that. How do they get all the way up there and not fall down? They won't fall down. We're very good at what we do here at the Food Depot. And if you are curious about that and other questions, please see Amanda or any Food Depot staff throughout the course of the night, and we'll schedule you for a tour. Thank you so much for being here. I see lots of friendly faces. It's a great night.
Thank you, Jill. The League is committed to civil discourse. The candidates have agreed to follow the League protocols for candidate forums, including respecting the time limits for their responses, not engaging in crosstalk, and being mutually respectful, courteous, constructive, and orderly, even when they disagree. The questions we ask will be selected by our screening panel to focus on the issues that seem to generate the most interest. Questions that are similar will be consolidated, and questions that are directed to one candidate or contain a personal attack will be eliminated. Due to time constraints, not all questions can be asked. We invite you to stay after the forum to talk to the candidates. If you haven't already submitted your questions, you can email them to lwvsfc@gmail.com now or at any time during the forum. For those of you who are attending in person, write your question, legibly please, on a 3x5 note card, one per card, and hold the card up so our runners can pick it up. Our timekeeper, Mary Shrubin, is sitting in front. When a candidate has 30 seconds left, she will hold up a yellow warning sign, and when the time is up, she will hold up the red stop sign. At that point, we ask that you wind up your response immediately. If not, I will interrupt out of fairness to all. In the interest of time, please save your applause until the end of the forum. Before I introduce the candidates, let me paraphrase the duties of the Commissioner of Public Lands. The Commissioner oversees the New Mexico State Land Office. The Land Office administers 9 million surface acres and 13 million mineral acres for the purpose of funding public education and other public institutions. The Land Office raises funds by leasing state trust land for a multitude of purposes, including oil and gas, renewable energy, agriculture, and a broad array of commercial uses. We will begin with 2-minute opening statements by the candidates and conclude with 1-minute closing statements. We will hear first from candidate Juan de Jesus Sanchez III, then candidate Matthew McQueen, and then candidate Jonas Moya. Okay.
Buenos tardes a todos. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Juan de Jesus Sanchez. I am a 13th generation New Mexican. I was raised in a ranching family in Valencia and Socorro counties. I grew up hunting, hiking, fishing, and working the land just like the generations before me. I truly believe that our public lands are essential to who we are here as New Mexicans, and my goal is to make sure that if I'm elected that we continue to protect our lands for future generations. What I'm trying to bring to this office is both lived and professional experience. Professionally, I've worked for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers as a natural resource specialist and ranger, for the New Mexico Acequia Commission as a technical assistant, helping manage water and our cultural, some of the cultural needs that we have here depending on our water and ag, and the last 5 years as the political director for U.S. Senator Martin Heinrich. And what I'm trying to do is mesh that professional experience with lived experience, with generational experience. As I said, I'm 13th generation. My great-great-grandfather founded a ranch out in Socorro County in the 1800s, and we've been handed down how we manage land for generations. So I want to make sure that we are bringing some of that kind of generational, traditional land management policies and the way that we've been managing land for years, and mesh that with the professional experience that I've garnered traveling the state. What I like to say is I'm the candidate that will bring a lot of on-the-ground experience. I've done restoration projects with the federal government. I've managed working with the Acequia Commission, managing the way that we manage our water and our culture. And I'm a hunter, a hiker, a fisherman, and an outdoors person who spends a lot of time outdoor. So when we're talking about our land, I'm going to be talking about places that I know, not places that I've seen on a map, lines on a map or dollars on a spreadsheet. These are places that I've been, places that I care about, and places that I want to bring, make sure that they are represented in the land office. So thank you all so much, and I look forward to chatting more.
Thank you. Mr. McQueen?
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming out. Can you hear me okay? Project more, I'm being told. So I'm Matthew McQueen, and I'm also running for State Land Commissioner. First of all, I apologize. I am getting over a cold. My voice doesn't always sound like this. I'll do my best to project. As was explained, the State Land Office, the State Land Commissioner position, is an incredibly big job. 9 million surface acres, 13 million mineral estate, $27 million annual budget, 190 employees, and currently over $2 billion a year in revenue. The commissioner, or current commissioner, Stephanie Garcia Richard, has said that this year they might hit $3 billion. In addition, the land commissioner, by statute, sits on the State Investment Council. Now, a lot of people don't really think about the State Land Office, and I think even fewer think about the State Investment Council. The State Investment Council oversees the management of the Land Grant Permanent Fund, which is currently at $38 billion, and our other permanent funds, totaling approximately $70 billion. This is New Mexico's nest egg, it's New Mexico's future. This is the money we're going to rely on when oil and gas goes bust, and we know oil and gas goes bust, right? It's a boom and bust industry. I personally think the next time it goes bust, it's going to be different because we have renewables that are already out competing oil and gas. So this is a big job. I bring the experience to do this job, to lead this office. I've been a real property attorney for over 30 years, specializing in land conservation, 12 years in the legislature, 10 years as chair of the House Energy, Environment, and Natural Resources Committee. I have by far the most experience of anyone up here, and that's what I propose to bring to the land office. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Moya.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you could hear me all right. I definitely was not ready for the Santa Fe traffic today, but I'm glad to be here in a familiar place. I actually, a couple years back, attended a meeting here at the Santa Fe Food Depot when I was working for an organization called New Mexico First. I was their civic engagement and public policy manager, and we advocated for food and nutrition programs throughout the state, as well as good policy that supports agriculture. I'm also a fourth-generation rancher, and I'm from a very small town, and unfortunately it keeps shrinking every year. That town's Tucumcari, New Mexico. And with Route 66 and its centennial year, you'll probably pass through it if you travel Route 66. We have lots of beautiful neon lights there, and we're home to some great history from New Mexico. But I'm running for New Mexico Public Land Commissioner because, just like so many of the candidates before you have said, this is an important job. And it's a job that requires experience and somebody that knows New Mexico. So as a fourth-generation rancher from a small town and a product of New Mexico schools, I went to elementary in House, New Mexico, where there's 100 kids, K through 12. That's a unique perspective in itself. And then I graduated from Tucumcari High School, which is also very small. I attended university at New Mexico State University, studied Ag Econ there, and then I went on to have a really great career in what I call serving the people, in what I believe in agriculture, working in food and agricultural policy. From New Mexico First to then working for New Mexico Cattle Growers as their executive director, and most recently being one of 4 political appointees under the Biden-Harris administration that got to stay in New Mexico as a presidential appointee. I was appointed to serve as the Farm Service Agency executive director, where I had 74 employees and 22 different field offices. So I understand that when policy's passed, how it directly affects people on the ground, because I've had to implement policy from the Farm Bill directly into the communities that I represent. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the first question, the time limit for answering this question will be 1 minute. Why do you want to be Commissioner of Public Lands? Mr. Sanchez.
I think there's so much at stake here in New Mexico. As a product of our public education system as well, I think it's really important that we continue to fund our public education and make sure our students have a great opportunity to to succeed here. I think we need to be worried about our long-term energy use and our long-term environment, so we need to be really diversifying our economy. And this is where my family has been for 13 generations, where I hope to be for a lot longer. I want to make sure that we have a place that we can continue to enjoy, to have the kind of experiences that you don't have anywhere else. Here in New Mexico, we are rich in our land, we are rich in our culture, and we need to protect those things. I think the land office is a place that we can absolutely do that, and we can make sure that we are doing what the needs of the people to make sure that we are funding our education and making sure our economy is diversified by working on renewable energy. But more than anything, we've been here forever. I want to continue to make sure that we are here for a long time, and I'm very invested in that.
Thank you, Mr. McQueen.
So one of the first people I told I was running for land commissioner was the Speaker of the House. And I had to tell him, because I'm a member of his caucus in the House of Representatives, and he needed to hear that from me and not from someone else. And he said to me, well, why would you want that job? It's boring. And he doesn't get it. I'm a land guy. I've been working with real property for over 30 years. I get excited when I hear about the projects that are going on at the land office. I get excited about the potential of the land office. And on top of all that, I think I'm going to be really good at this job because I have this background, and I think I can work with the staff and build on the success of Commissioner Stephanie Garcia Richard and really take the land office to the next level.
Thank you. Mr. Moya?
Well, I actually love this question, and it's a question that's often asked on the campaign trail. And if you would have asked me about 2 years ago if I was going to run for land commissioner, I would have said no. But after my service with the Biden-Harris administration and understanding that we need a rural voice in Santa Fe that has rural experience and that cares about jobs and economic growth, and that understands that jobs and economic growth don't have to come with the sacrifice of land stewardship, I decided I'm going to throw my hat into this race, and that's why I decided to run for land commissioner. I'm a product of New Mexico. I care about jobs, and I'm sick and tired of kids that I went to school with leaving the state and working somewhere else. Too often do we have people that move to Phoenix and Dallas and Denver, and they don't stay in New Mexico. I want to keep them here in New Mexico and create jobs for New Mexicans using our state lands and making sure that we balance land stewardship with that progress.
Thank you. And the next question is also 1 minute. What will be your #1 priority during your term as Commissioner of Public Lands? And we're going to begin with Mr. McQueen.
So my #1 priority is to diversify the revenue in the land office. As I said, the land office is taking in about $2.5 billion a year. 97% of that money comes from oil and gas. 97%. And if you think about it, you're making 97% of your money essentially from the mineral estate. You've got 9 million surface acres to work with. We can do more with renewable energy, wind, solar, geothermal. We can do more commercial projects on appropriate parcels. And we can even do housing and workforce and affordable housing, again, on appropriate parcels. And I always say that because there are certainly there are plenty of land state trust parcels that should not be developed. But the 9 million acres is scattered across the state, and there are other parcels that are perfectly appropriate for those uses, and that's how we diversify that revenue.
Thank you. Mr. Moya.
All right. My #1 priority, of course, is going to be able to hopefully maintain those $2 billion that we're currently generating. Even if we go through different waves of oil and gas production and the market price of oil, I want to be able to step in there and make sure that we're maintaining those $2 billion worth of revenue for our education system. I also want to work on jobs. I want to make sure that we're offering jobs and inviting industries into our state that are going to create jobs in rural economies. And not only just any kind of jobs, but high-skilled, high-paying jobs with benefits for New Mexicans, such as health care, retirement, and something that's going to get them on a career path forward to grow and hopefully stay and make a bigger impact in those small rural communities. Because too often do we have people leaving the outer edge of our state and coming to the middle. We need to have a balance of both. let's do that with our state lands and make sure that we're promoting the right businesses.
Thank you. And Mr. Sanchez?
My number one priority is going to be to be a good steward of the land, our land, air, and water. I think it's essential that we are looking at our land not just as a commodity and a resource for today, for 5 years in the future, for 10 years in the future, but for a lot longer than that. We need to be thinking 100 years in the future, because we're going to continue to need to get the revenue coming from our lands into our schools, into our permanent funds moving forward. This isn't something that we need to be focusing on today. We need to be focusing long-term, because we have so many great opportunities here in land, and being a good steward of the land means we're doing restoration projects on our lands. It means we're finding ways to diversify to make sure our airs are clean and make sure that we're holding oil and gas accountable for plugging orphan wells. It means expanding renewable energy, but being a good steward of the land is the most important part, so that our future generations have the same opportunities that we have.
Thank you. This next question is also 1 minute, and it's actually several questions. What is your personal experience with state lands as a user or visitor, as a lessee, as a regulator or administrator? And we will start with Mr. Moya.
All right, so I have a lot of personal experience with state land. My family's ranch, like I said, goes back generations, and my grandmother had a parcel of land we called the school section. It was 800 acres that we knew directly every year that we paid the lease on that land. It funded schools. So I come from the perspective of being a rancher, being a manager of that land and making sure that it's open for hunters whenever it's hunting season, and that it's accessible whenever people need to inspect it. And also, coming as a grass farmer, because land stewardship was always number one. If there's not enough grass on the ground and we're not getting rid of invasive plants like mesquite, then we're not adding value to the land and we're not being good stewards of the land. I also have experience as an FSA director, where so many of the participants that participate in FSA programs rely on state land. So I also seen from the business side and from the policy implementation aspect of things, how our state lands work for us and how our leases manage it.
Thank you. Mr. Sanchez.
I too come from a ranching family that we had state trust land that we leased. My family's ranch, we were leasees of state trust land, so I grew up grazing cattle on state trust land, working the land out on state trust land as a leasee. I'm also a hunter. I actually had the most successful year I've ever had putting in for hunts. I drew for deer and elk this year. Don't worry, for those of you, there's no safer deer or elk than the one I'm chasing with a bow, but I still have the opportunity to go out and do that. And also, as far as management of the land, I think whenever we're talking about state lands, we're not just talking about the land, we're talking about the water that goes through it, the people that depend on it. So as working for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers as a natural resource specialist, I did a lot of restoration projects. Along with working for the New Mexico Acequia Commission, we fought really hard to make sure our water kept on flowing, and these are things that are all water goes downstream and it will go through state lands. So when we're talking about water, when we're talking about restoration on any parcel of land, it all connects to our state trust land.
Thank you. Mr. McQueen.
So I don't come from a ranching family. My experience with state trust land is professional and through the legislature. So professionally, as I said, I specialize in land conservation. I've done conservation easements throughout the state. Conservation easement, you often want to do an easement next to other public land because you get more bang for your buck. Recently, the Land Office has been doing conservation leasing with the New Mexico Land Conservancy. They just recently signed a 60,000 acre conservation lease. I think that's fantastic. I've also worked in the legislature on state trust lands. I worked with the current commissioner, Stephanie Garcia-Richard, to raise the royalty rate in the Permian Basin. And so in order to do that, I worked extensively with staff. It was a great experience. It took me 2 tries. We got that to the governor's desk for her signature.
Okay, thank you. And this next question is 2 minutes. What would you continue and what would you change, if anything, that would distinguish you as Commissioner of Public Lands? Mr. Sanchez.
I think all three of us are going to have a very similar question on what we continue. We're talking about the current land commissioner. She has done an amazing job. One of the things that I specifically think of is opening the Office of Renewable Resources. Essentially, it goes out and looks for opportunities to expand our renewable energy. I think this is a hugely important office that we need to continue to make sure that we're putting resources towards, and we're exploring the opportunities across our 9 million acres of state trust land. I also think that the work that she's done to make sure that we are capping abandoned and orphaned wells at no cost to the taxpayers is hugely important, and that's something we need to absolutely continue. She has done an amazing job there, and I'd love to grab the baton and move forward with that. The things that I'd like to really focus on are around access and land restoration projects. I think that there are some places that we can be working a lot better on making sure that we have access to our state trust land. That's 9 million acres, and our outdoor economy is one of those things that we can continue to expand upon, working with the state, working with the governor's office. So making sure that we're opening up our lands for people to be able to go out and explore. You shouldn't have to just have a hunting license or know how to navigate through the permitting process to be able to go outside and enjoy your state lands. They belong to each and every one of us, and we should have opportunities to expand on what the current land commissioner has done to encourage outdoor recreation. And finally, it's doing restoration on some of our lands. Some of our parcels they're just not in the best of shape, and there's great opportunities to work with outside organizations to do some restoration projects on soil, on grasses. Not only does this help our grasslands and the habitats around, this also could be a funding of a source of funding with things like carbon credits.
Thank you. Mr. McQueen.
So Juan's correct. We all think that Commissioner Garcia Richard is doing a great job. She's, of course, term limited, so that's why we're here. There are a lot of things I would like to do and build on her success. As I mentioned previously, we've got to diversify the revenue in the land office. Renewables, commercial projects, housing projects on appropriate parcels. I would also like to see the land office take an equity position in some of the projects that they work on. So we don't just have to lease land to a developer, or in some cases they auction off a piece of property. You can retain a joint venture agreement, carrying interest, a silent partner kind of situation, where you can earn some of the revenue on the upside of that transaction. And that's a way we can increase the revenue for the land office. And I have the real estate background to put that into place. I'd also like to look at doing more land swaps. Land swaps are really complicated and staff intensive, and there are some in the works, but our surface ownership is fragmented, and we can improve conservation areas, we can improve recreation areas by swapping out some of our state trust land, maybe with the tribes, maybe with the federal government, in order to consolidate those holdings. The State Land Office has an existing reclamation and restoration fund where they have some money that they can do restoration projects on state trust land. I would like to see there be a comparable improvement fund where you could install gates, maybe trails, parking areas to enhance recreational activity. And finally, I'd like to have an education advocate on staff to work with the public education department, the legislature, and the unions and the teachers to advocate for the public schools, which is the reason for the existence of the State Land Office.
Thank you. Mr. Moya.
All right. It's going to sound like there's an echo in here, but a lot of us, we all think pretty much the same. We are very much aligned, and Stephanie has done a great job of being the land commissioner and setting the bar high. And that's what I want to continue to do, is set the bar high and continue the great work that is being done at the State Land Office. For one, it's already one of the best places to work in the country. I want to continue that momentum, but I want to carry that work outside of Santa Fe and Albuquerque. I want to really bring those opportunities to rural New Mexico and some of our other field offices. I really think that could benefit the state land office. And as we're thinking about doing more projects and bringing more additional revenue to the state land office and through our leases, we're going to need that staffing capacity. So increasing the staffing capacity in those field offices and bringing in folks that have a diverse background, maybe in surveying and being able to bring some different insights in land management to the land office. I think right now we get really bogged down in some of the litigation aspects of things, which is very important, but I think we need to diversify and think about as a jobs and the jobs that we offer from the state land office, that we have more surveyors, more land managers, so that they can go out there and manage the land appropriately. I also want to continue to move into projects like affordable housing, and then continue to hold oil and gas to a very high standard. I think right now in a national aspect of things, New Mexico has a very high standard when it comes to testing and air quality checks. I want to continue that. I think we need to be monitoring these sites and making sure that the aquifers in those areas are maintained. So I want to add jobs to those areas. I want to continue to lean into that monitoring. And the one thing I would change is, like I said countless times, and you're probably going to get tired of hearing me say it, but jobs. I want to create more jobs.
Thank you. This next question is a 2-minute question. What are 2 or 3 concrete, specific steps you will take, if elected, to hold the oil and gas industry accountable for the environmental harms it causes? And we'll begin with Mr. McQueen.
Okay, so this is a great question, and there's actually a lot going on in this area. I have told the oil and gas industry the same thing that I've told my conservation friends, and that is, we appreciate the revenue we receive from the oil and gas company, and we ask that they pay a fair price, follow the rules, and clean up their own messes. And I've worked on all of those things in the legislature, and I will continue to work on those things at the state land office. So we already raised the royalty rate in the Permian Basin. That was something that was worked on for years. I got that done on my second try. I'm very proud of that. The land office recently published a new bonding rule. So the existing bonding requirement was $10,000 per lease. They're raising that to $150,000 per lease. And the maximum bonding, if you have multiple leases, is as high as $40 million. So they're taking really important steps to address that. The OCD, the Oil Conservation Division, is working on its own bonding rule. Commissioner Garcia-Richard and her staff have done a great job working with lessees and operators to plug their wells. And that, involves litigation, which is important, but that will continue. I proposed a bill in the legislature that didn't pass, but we should revisit it. There's this pattern where, the big producers start a well, and then they transfer it to a medium-sized producer, and then transfer it to a smaller producer, and the smaller producer doesn't have the resources. My proposal has been, if you ever own or operate that well, you're on the hook to plug it. And what that would do would be require the big producers to vet who they transfer it to before they transfer it. And that way we could protect the state land office and the taxpayers.
Thank you. Mr. Moya.
All right. Some of the big concrete steps that I think anybody should take is to make sure we're relying on data. We need to do well monitoring. We need to monitor the air quality in areas. We need to be looking at our aquifers in the areas where oil and gas production is occurring, and making sure that we actually listen to the data and that we communicate that data out to the folks in the area, as well as back to the companies that are in those areas, to be better, to use technology that's available, to be more efficient when they're producing the oil and gas, and making sure that that impact on the area is limited as as much as we can limit it. And I also want to lean into no drilling next to schools. I think that's one thing that we've kind of touched on through the campaign trail, and we need to make sure that that message is loud and clear, that if it's within a 6-mile radius of a school, that we don't want to have them drilling next to schools. And I think just being good communicators and working more in those, in doing a little more outreach, as well as community engagement from the land office in the areas where oil and gas is producing, is going to help us be a better actor, as well as communicate to them that these have serious impacts. Because we've seen how, you know, we could talk about it all day until we're blue in the face, right, of how it's eating up on our ozone, how it's taking fresh water out of the aquifers. But until we get more community involvement and we get people on the ground talking about it, then nothing's going to change.
Thank you. Mr. Sanchez.
Yeah, so first and foremost, I think there's a kind of conservation ideology that everyone in here, that I'm sure if they hike, they go outdoors, you pick up after yourself, you clean up after yourself. It's a very basic concept, but it's something that we should be using with our oil and gas. So essentially, if you are a bad actor, if you spill, if you leave a well unplugged, you are not allowed to use state trust land until you have resolved that issue. That's the same thing it is whenever if you're going to be a hunter, if you're going to be a rancher, whatever it is, you leave the land better than how you found it. So the first and most important thing to do is hold folks accountable. If they are having spills, if they're not cleaning up after themselves, if they're not plugging wells, then you tell them you're not going to get another lease on state trust land until you have resolved that issue. What that helps do is make sure that they are resolving the issue, and it's not the taxpayers who are going to have to resolve that issue. So that's the first part. The second part is some of the bonding that Representative McQueen mentioned. $10,000 is not enough. That needs to be increased because the cost to plug a well is it's a lot more expensive than that in most cases. So we need to make, in all cases actually, so we need to make sure that we are increasing the bonding there. And one of the other things that we see is there will be a oil and gas company that may go bankrupt, and then who ends up cleaning it up? It's up to us. It's up to us to figure it out, and if the bonding is not strong enough, then we're not figuring it out. We need to be making sure that we are tracking what is happening there. If there is someone who went bankrupt and went back to Texas and then came back with a whole new company and is trying to start all over again and use state trust land, then we need to be holding them accountable for what they've been doing. So we need to be really cautious. We need to be really aware of how people are trying to get away with not cleaning up after themselves.
Thank you, Mr. Take a very brief break. 3 minutes.
Mic check, testing 1 2. Mic check, testing 1 2. Does that sound better?
Across the trust land. Yeah. So Project Jupiter is on private land, you can't do anything about that, at least the land of pipeline across.
All right, mic check, testing 1 2. Mic check, testing.
Yeah, and so, I mean, I think,
Thanks, Mike.
to me, this might come up, but cooperate on good projects, and you can resist on bad projects. Yeah. And like right now, I feel like Project Jupiter is a bad project. Like it's like the proposed emissions, now everything's starting to change. The proposed emissions
All right, mic check testing 1 2. Mic check testing 1 2.
and it's like you're already moving dirt out there, and you haven't pinned that down. That's that's a little trouble.
I spend a lot of time on that process. They're really concerned.
Oh yeah, I bet they are.
And that region.
Yeah. Let's see if we get a data center question.
But I also do social media for the league.
Oh, hopefully Jonas makes it back in time.
You got down there beforehand, and
There's
I
a
think it's
secret
a
bathroom.
one-seater.
This next question is 1 minute, and the questioner is asking for a yes and no on this. Would you support Commissioner Garcia Richards' denial of Project Jupiter and any other data center in New Mexico on state land? And we will be starting with Mr. Moya.
So yes, I support Commissioner Garcia Richards, what her standard is. So yes, I have. I think we need to evaluate by case decision on any future projects on state land.
Thank you. Mr. Sanchez.
I am unsure if I would 100% support because of the, it's a 0.6 miles of a 17-mile pipeline, and if it's not going through state trust land, then it will be going through BLM land, which Steve Pierce and Donald Trump will be managing. Data centers, this is more than a yes or no question, but we need to be working on community benefit plans. We need to be working on closed loop water systems. We need to be considering community engagement, and we need to be having project labor agreements. All four of those things need to happen before we even consider having a data center on state trust land. We need to be ready and not be caught on our heels, because that's what we have been, is caught on our heels without really boundaries around what data centers can do here.
Mr. McQueen.
So I support the commissioner's position, and more broadly, we need guardrails for data centers. They need to be on renewable energy. They need to use reclaimed water. They shouldn't have adverse local impacts on water use, electric rates, or air quality, and they should be using local labor and union labor. And until we get those guardrails, we're going to have problems. And the problem, one of the problems we face is these decisions are being made at the local level. And so the data center companies are playing off different communities against each other, trying to get the best deal. And like, oh, if you don't give us this tax break, we'll go somewhere else. We need to standardize this somewhat. And until we have guardrails, until we have good projects, the State Land Office doesn't have to facilitate bad projects.
Thank you. And this next question is 30 seconds. Would you take campaign donations from oil and gas companies? Why or why not? And yes, we'll start with you, Mr. Sanchez.
I haven't taken any campaign donations from oil and gas. I haven't solicited any campaign donations from oil and gas. I will not close the door completely because we have after the primary, we're going to be going up against some big dollars that are going to be coming in. But as of right now, y'all can go check the Secretary of State's website. I have not taken any oil and gas money, and I haven't asked for any oil and gas money.
Thank you. Mr. McQueen.
I will close that door. I do not and will not take oil and gas money regardless. The State Land Office is a de facto regulator of the oil and gas industry. The oil and gas industry uses its campaign donations to influence policy. I will not take their money.
Thank you. Mr. Moya.
So my thinking on this is right now it's a statewide race, and I'm getting my tail handed to me when it comes to donations. If you guys have seen how much money I raised, I have not raised a lot of money compared to the other two that I'm running against. So in the mission of keeping a diverse ticket and making sure that we have as many options as we can give to the voters of New Mexico of resume, background, and values,
Thank you. So, the next question is 1 minute. The record oil and gas production in New Mexico is also creating huge volumes of produced water. With our state, considering the potential to authorize reuse of purified produced water, how would you approach this issue? Mr. McQueen.
So produced water is water that comes back up when you're doing oil and gas operations. You're getting 5 barrels of water for every barrel of oil. It's a huge volume of water. It's a huge problem. The oil and gas companies want to find a solution, but their solution is that the state, for some reason, should pay to clean up their water. The produced water should never be put in our streams, our aquifers, on our fields, or in our taps. The science isn't there. You cannot do this reliably. There's so many chemicals in it, they don't even know what to look for, and they don't have tests to test for all the chemicals. If they can find an industrial use for that water, fine, as long as you dispose of the sludge when you clean it up and there's no emissions at the other end. But until that happens, the oil and gas industry needs to deal with produced water. It's not the state of New Mexico's problem.
Thank you. Mr. Moya?
You know, I couldn't agree more that the New Mexican taxpayer should not be on the hook to figure out a solution for a way to treat and clean produced water. And one thing I would stand for being in agriculture is no produced water should be used on fields that are going to grow crops for human consumption. The footprint on that and the trail of our soils not forgetting is too big to risk it. So we need to think about smarter ways to use produced water and make sure that entrepreneurs and others are picking up the tab for that, especially those that are pulling out the water. But I would encourage anyone that is coming up with solutions, that the State Land Office would be a good partner in making sure that we develop the research and make it affordable to find a great solution to use our produced water, because water is such a limited resource here in New Mexico. I also want to look into brackish water. I think down in Alamogordo, the brackish water treatment facility down there is doing a great job, and I want to lean into that. And as land commissioner, I would, basically bring them at a table. Never mind.
Mr. Sanchez.
We are a party of science, and right now we need to be following the science in any way that we can. As Representative McQueen mentioned, I don't think we're at a point where our produced water should be put into our rivers or our taps. There are opportunities to have industrial uses. We talked about data centers recently. I'm not sure if produced water is the answer or brackish water, but we should be using our fresh water for data centers, right? So what we need to continue to do is follow the science. I was lucky enough to go down to New Mexico State a few weeks back to meet with some of the folks that are doing some really groundbreaking research on produced water here in the state of New Mexico. We need to find water solutions. It's a hugely important part, but we need to follow the science, and as my understanding right now, it's not there.
Thank you. This next question is 1 minute. Grazing lessees often demand payment from other users to consent to use or relinquish part of their grazing lease in excess of actual damages, often extremely. Do you intend to limit their ability to do so, and how would you do that? And 1 minute, beginning with you, Mr. Moya.
Perfect. Well, I'm going to start learning to speak a little bit faster. So I'm thinking the question's hinting at when a producer sells a ranch, they're selling the lease along with that, right? The right to use the state land lease. And I wouldn't limit that, but what I want to do is be a better partner and encourage them to take care of that land. I think there's a lot of between agency work, whether it's federal agencies like NRCS or working with NMDA or the New Mexico Department of Energy to figure out, or not EMNER, but finding other partners to make sure that we're getting rid of invasive species, we're building up soil banks, and we're actually being able to keep that topsoil. So raising up those seed banks, making sure the soils are healthy, and then being a good partner in that way. So extending different opportunities with them to be able to do that work without hitting their pockets very hard. I want to be able to be good advocates for that, right? I want to promote that good soil, healthy soil works.
Thank you. And Mr. Sanchez.
So we have 9 million acres of state trust land, as you heard earlier, about 190 employees to cover all that 9 million acres. So as you could imagine, it's really hard to monitor, to steward that land. So we depend on our ranchers, we depend on the people that graze our land, because that's where the majority of our land is used up for. That's where the majority of our leases are used, is through grazing leases. I'm going to sound like a broken record. But if people have been taking care of the land, and the land is in good shape, and before they're getting ready to sell it off, then absolutely, that is a part of the process. They have been good stewards of the land. They have invested in the land. They made sure that the grasses, the soil are in a good place, and they're not overusing it. It's a part of who they are. It's a part of the areas that they managed. So once again, this is an opportunity to encourage people to continue to take care of our lands, as they are our eyes on the ground on the land, and they're the ones that report back to us if there has been any kind of spills, any kind of dumpings, any kind of anything of that nature, to make sure that our lands are taken care of.
Thank you. Mr. McQueen.
So I think we want to look at conjunctive use of our state trust lands. What are different activities that can coexist side by side? We have oil and gas leases, many of which are decades old. I looked at one that was signed in 1922, over 100 years old, and a 12.5% royalty rate. What else can we do with these parcels? Can you do solar, consistent with oil and gas family? Can you do solar with grazing? Can you do carbon credits? Can you do restoration and capture that value? The good news on the grazing leases is while the oil and gas leases are held by production, that's why they're so old. As long as you keep producing, you get to keep it. The grazing leases come up for renewal on a 5-year increment. So we can tweak those, and those can evolve, and we can work to make sure that our grazing lessees are allowing hunting, fishing, hiking, and even dispersed camping.
Thank you. Next question, 1 minute. What will you do to protect our state lands from federal actions such as development near Chaco Canyon? Mr. Sanchez.
Yeah, so there are a few different places where the federal government is coming in and the land office is at the forefront. How long do I have on this one?
One,
okay. First of all is the trying to bring down the barrier, the 10-mile buffer around Chaco Canyon for oil and gas drilling. There is a ton of state trust land out there. There's a lot more BLM land, but there's a ton of state trust land out in those areas in Chaco, and the current land commissioner has an executive order to ensure there is no drilling there. What we can do is make sure that we are not working, if the federal government decides to go in and erase the buffer, we're not working with oil and gas. We are not allowing for pipelines to go through state trust land. We are maybe putting, maybe on our state parcels, we're not allowing their workers to go through our state parcels to go to where they need to be. We can push back there, we can push back on the border, as the current land commissioner has done, to ensure that we are not selling off our state trust land to the Trump administration to build a wall, and the Pecos River, we to continue to protect it from mining, and that's a place the state land office has an executive order as well.
thank you. Mr. McQueen.
So this is coming up more and more in different areas: Chaco, Upper Pecos, the Trail Mine, the Caja del Rio, along the border. So the general rule is federal land is federal land. We can't tell them what to do or not do on federal land. State trust land is state trust land. Same rule applies. They can't tell us what to do or not do on state trust land. But we can cooperate on good projects, and we can resist on bad projects. So in the greater Chaco area, there's 70,000 acres of state trust land. It's a mix of surface and mineral, and just mineral estate. We don't have to allow development of our state trust land, and that's going to make it harder to develop the surrounding land. Same with the Caja del Rio, same with Upper Pecos, same with the border wall. We can, as I said, cooperate on good projects, resist on bad projects.
Thank you. Mr. Moya.
Well, I have the exact same analogy, but I'm going to put it in different terms right now. And I'm going to go back to my ranching roots, right? I mean, I have good neighbors, and I have bad neighbors, right? Some neighbors take care of their land and have great fences, and other neighbors, you know, they don't have a speck of grass on their land, and their fences are always down. So just because we have a bad neighbor doesn't mean we got to hold the same standard. And I think what we need to look at is making sure that whatever's going on the national level, that we're doing what's right for New Mexicans, that we're doing what's right for future generations, and that we're protecting the most valuable asset that they don't make anymore, which is land. And once we get rid of that land, there's no way we're ever going to get it back. It's gone forever. So as state land commissioner, I would step in, be reactive to any negativity that's going on the federal level, and I'll make sure that our lands are there for future generations. And I've seen it before. I took over the Farm Service Agency after a Trump administration. I seen how morale was down with staff and how policies were directly affecting ranchers in small rural towns.
Thank you. Now we have a 1-minute question. What experience do you have working with tribes? Mr. McQueen.
1-minute question. What experience I have working with tribes? So I have done land conservation transactions with tribal governments. And it's tricky because we think of land and enforcing land use agreements and conservation easements in state court. And tribes are sovereign nations. They're not subject to our state court. I will say, you know, I've reached out to tribes. I'm endorsed by the Okeh-Lingeh Pueblo and the Mexico Native Vote. I have a long history of including tribes through my legislative work, and I think the key with most tribal interactions is consultation. The tribes want to be asked what they want us to do. They want to know what we're doing. They want input on what we're doing, and they deserve that respect. And so I will promote that consultation at the State Land Office.
Thank you. Mr. Moya.
All right, so my experience with tribes goes back to my food advocacy work. At New Mexico First, I've worked with tribes to advocate for farmers markets and build up food supply chains within tribal lands. So I understand how big it is just to go into the community and get community input. We got to go to folks where they're at. We can't rely on people to come to and meet us in Santa Fe or meet us in Albuquerque. We need to start doing more community events in and on tribal lands. I also have experience implementing federal programs on tribal lands, which can be tricky because the individuals on those lands don't own it. So the paperwork of making sure that they qualify for federal loans and federal farm assistance programs can be very difficult. So I had that experience of going in there, bringing people that are living in those communities, having them on boards, and I would do the same thing. I would bring them to and make sure that they're included on the advisory boards and that we go and meet people where they're at.
Thank you. And Mr. Sanchez.
When I worked for the Army Corps of Engineers, I worked at Cochiti Lake, which is the only U.S. Army Corps of Engineer project that is an easement. It's actually still owned by the Pueblo of Cochiti. As a natural resource specialist, I would work with their natural resource department at Cochiti Pueblo to do restoration projects on an area that the Corps of Engineers came in, destroyed a sacred site of theirs, took out some of their native plants, native grasses, and really decimated the area. As a natural resource specialist, I would work with the tribe to restore that area, to make it a place that looked a little bit more like it did before the Corps came in and destroyed it, and I was very proud of that work. When I worked for the Acequia Commission, we also would do things like protecting things like the Teredo mine, because as the water goes down, it affects everyone. It affects tribes. We need to make sure we're doing government-to-government consultation, and there is an Office of Cultural Resources in the Land Office right now. I want to put that into statute, so every commissioner moving forward has to be held to that. I already have a legislator who's willing to hold that, carry that legislation my first year.
Thank you. We have 1 minute question. What do you think of the current leasing rate for public lands, including in the Permian Basin? And we'll start with Mr. Moya.
All right, so I think the current leasing rate is going to get us by for now, but definitely needs to be examined in the next couple of years. So nothing immediate, but I know for a fact as oil and gas prices rise, and New Mexico in itself is actually, I would consider a national security hotspot, because we've seen when we rely on oil outside of the country, right, how it disrupts supply chains, it disrupts prices, and it really hurts basically everyone. So with the oil reserves that we have in New Mexico, we need to start thinking strategically and making sure that that we're thinking about the future of tomorrow, and that those prices represent what's fair on the market value.
Thank you. Mr. Sanchez.
The Land Office needs to be thinking not only about the money that's coming in, but the economy that is built around our lands. So I think that our leasing rates are at a good place. I think the royalty rate increase was amazing. It's putting all of us in a really great spot if we are in this position, because there will be some record funding that's going to continue to come in like it has this year. I think that we have an opportunity to lead right now. The Trump administration is going after renewable energy across the country, cutting off millions and tens of millions of dollars to projects. We all sat on a stage with our Republican opponent that one of us will end up facing, and he was talking about increasing the royalty rate on renewable energy. That is not what we need to do at this time. This is an opportunity for New Mexico to lead, and this is an opportunity for us to not only lead in our renewable energy, but an opportunity to help our economy and make sure that we have great jobs, great union project labor agreement jobs on these areas as we build an economy here in New Mexico that we can depend on our renewable energy.
Thank you. And this is our final question. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. McQueen, I am so
I'm
sorry.
eager to answer this question.
How did I?
So Senate Bill 23 last year, that was my bill. I carried that in the House. I defended that on the floor. We raised the royalty rate from 20 to 25%. That change will increase payments in the Land Grant Permanent Fund by $1 billion over the life of the bill. I think that was obviously the right thing to do. The Permian Basin supports that royalty rate. What was interesting is when I was defending that bill on the House floor, one of my Republican colleagues tried to do this little gotcha, and he said, well, why, if you're going to keep raising it, why specify the royalty rate in statute at all? And I said, okay, let's get rid of that. Let's let the commissioner have the discretion to lease land at a market rate. And that's what we should do. The cap is inherently a limitation on that rate. If we really want to do fair market leases, the commissioner needs the discretion to put land up for lease at a fair market value.
Thank you, Mr. McQueen. And now, our final question. It's a 1-minute question. What are the greatest challenges facing the land office? And we're going to begin with Mr. Sanchez.
I think one of the greatest challenges, and I've touched on this before, is we have 9 million acres of land and we have 190 staff members. The land office will generate close to $3 billion this year, yet we do not get a percentage of that to help make sure that we are maintaining those lands and continuing to make sure that those are taken care of for the future. I think that's a huge problem, the fact that we have to go to the legislature and ask for money to manage these lands. The return on investment is out of this world. So making sure that we can manage our 9 million acres, and I think the way that we do that is by trying to find ways to bring more money into the land office, as well as trying to decentralize our land office as well. I know we're in Santa Fe, but the majority of the people that work for the land office live here in Santa Fe. Well, the majority of our lands are outside of Santa Fe. We need to make sure that we are going into more of our offices. We're working with our universities. We're doing internships, fellowship programs. We are having our staff go to different parts of the state as well because we need them to be closer to the land that they manage.
Thank you. Mr. McQueen.
The greatest challenge of the land office is the scope of the agency. So 9 million surface acres, that's about 12% of the state of New Mexico. That's an area of land bigger than the entire state of Maryland. That's what they're dealing with, and they're dealing with this with a staff of 190. Other states have greater staff in order to deal with their state trust lands. So the scope is a problem. We're dealing with legacy waste, which is a challenge, from the oil and gas industry and other mining extractive industries. And we're dealing with an uncertain future in climate change. As a lot of these lands are leased for grazing, we're facing greater aridity, less surface flow, less rainfall, and we're going to have, we saw this a couple days ago in Albuquerque, dust. We need to do restoration on our lands to control for the future. And the final thing is, this is a trust relationship. The state land office has a fiduciary duty to care for these lands for the benefit of New Mexico.
Thank you. Mr. Roya.
All right, so I was taking a few notes because I think this is a very important question. And my two, I'm going to call them colleagues already, but the two candidates that also run in this race, they hit the nail on the head. It's budget, it's climate change, and we got to be adapted to that without sacrificing the revenue for our children, because that's what the main goal is, making sure we are able to balance land stewardship and economic development and economic opportunity to maintain the $2 billion, almost $3 billion this year, that feeds directly into our education budget. And then I also wrote down in my little note, and so I'm going to make this super political, but right now, the Trump administration is one of the biggest challenges when it comes to managing and taking care of our state lands. Because of what's going on federal lands, we need to be more reactive and be more aware than ever before to see how he wakes up the next day, because nobody knows exactly what that guy's thinking.
Thank you. We will now move to the candidates' one-minute closing statements in reverse order from their opening statements. So we will begin with Mr. Moya.
All right. Well, my 1-minute statement is, think about rural New Mexico, and let's really get somebody in this position that has the experience to lead. Not only the experience to lead, but to step in on day one. Because I know as an administrator how big of a learning curve and how big of an intimidation it is to go into an office as the new guy, right? The new guy that's a boss, let alone just being a new guy. But going into the office and making sure that from the leadership level, that you bring in the confidence and the values and the leadership that's needed to, from day one, get to work. Because I've had 74 employees that were career employees, and I'm more than adequately prepared to step in and manage 109 career employees. And I want to make sure at every step of the way that in rural New Mexico and jobs and our economies are being taken care of. Because without that, New Mexico is going to continue to shrink, and we need to make sure we keep our kids here. Like I said in my opening statement, I'm tired of seeing New Mexicans leave. We raise too many great kids to lose them to Texas or Arizona or Denver.
Thank you. Mr. McQueen.
So I think whoever is next land commissioner, whether it's hopefully one of the three of us or the other guy, we're going to have a lot to learn at the land office. It's going to be a new agency. We've got to get to know the staff. We've got to get to know the inner workings of the land office, and that's going to be really important, and I don't discount that. But I've got the background, the experience, and a proven track record to do this work. We see each other a lot. We're pretty friendly. I like these guys. But I've got law, land, and legislative experience that they just don't have. And I think when I go into the land office, I'm going to start at a higher level. My learning curve isn't going to be quite as steep, and I'm going to be able to take the land office to the next level, again, building on the success of our current commissioner, Stephanie Garcia Richard, and many thanks to her.
Thank you. Mr. Sanchez.
Well, thank you all for having us this evening. As Representative McQueen said, we'll be meeting again here in the next few days. You all are welcome to join us. They're like family now because we see them more than anyone else. This is a hugely important time for our party, for our country, and the land office is a place where we can be pushing back against the Trump administration. Our lands are under attack, and we need leadership, and we need to be ready to be able to lead on day one. And I plan to bring that. What I'm bringing to the office is on-the-ground experience. I have traveled this state 7 of the last 12 years, traveling to every community in our state. That's why I'm getting a lot of support from a lot of the different areas across the state. I hunt, I graze cattle, I've done restoration projects, I proposed to my wife on public lands. Public lands are who I am, and I want you all I would ask for your support to be looking at me as someone who will take care of our land with the experience on the ground and professionally to make sure our land office is taken care of for the next 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes this evening's Santa Fe County Candidate Forum. I want to thank Bill Church, editor, and Patrick Dorsey, publisher of the Santa Fe New Mexican, the entire Food Depot crew, and Henry Lopez and Matt Dowside of Lopez Integrated Technologies for broadcasting this forum, and our translator, Claudia Hernandez. It will be available for future streaming on the New Mexican's website, santafenewmexican.com, and on our website, LWVSFC. I also want to thank the Food Depot for providing this excellent venue for the candidate forums, free of charge to the League. For more information on the candidates, the League's voter guide will be available in May at lwvsfc.org and vote411.org. We want to remind you that if your question was not asked, you are welcome to stay after the forum to talk to the candidates. For those of you who are watching online, if you have questions for the candidates, go to vote411.org for the candidates' contact information. Be sure to make your voice heard in this election by voting early or absentee or at the polls on June 2nd. Please join me in thanking the candidates for their participation. And good night.